What do you think the next few years have got in store for us?
Um, I'm going to take all three of those influences and answer it because they're all related. There's a business cycle or a short-term debt cycle, I call it, that, sort of recession to recession. And the way it works is you have a recession and weak economy, central banks stimulate credit growth. Credit gives you buying power. You go out and buy, the economy picks up, and then that continues until you start to have inflation. Then they tighten monetary policy, and then the economy weakens and it goes into the next recession. Since 1945, when the New World Order began, in other words, we had the currency and also the American World Order beginning in that, we've had 12 and a half of those cycles. They typically last about 7 years, give or take about 3. And so we are now about halfway through this cycle in which they did the stimulation, inflation rises, they tighten monetary policy, and we're in the phase of the cycle where there's going to be then the cracks occurring and the negative impact on economic activity and the like. And it's going to be more difficult than normal because there's so much debt outstanding, and we're, what we just talked about. So that is likely to happen over, let's say, the next year and year and a half, which means that it will take us in through the elections. And what we have is a situation where the second of those influences, the internal conflict influence, is bad, and you have a lot of populism. So populists are people who will fight to win at all cost. They're not compromisers. I will fight and I will win for you, and the rules be damned, compromising be damned. And so you're going to have a political situation in terms of, that kind of environment. It's a bad time for that, but it'll end up paying an impact on the nature of the elections, I think. And then you have the international conflict. We are much closer to a big conflict, a war of sorts, either a sanctions and economic war or even possibly a military war with China. And because of the politics also, that will be pushing its limits too, because there are the one thing that most Americans are united on, and both Democrats and Republicans are united on, is anti-China. And as a result, and they all want a strong man or woman, strong person on that. And so I think you're going to see pushing of the limits there, and that becomes a dangerous set of circumstances. So I think that if we take the next, let's call it 1, 2, 3 years, I think that those are going to be riskier years.
I spoke to an evolutionary psychologist and an evolutionary anthropologist a little while ago on the show, and they were teaching me about the values and the type of characteristics that ancestral tribes would have preferred in leaders at different states. And in times of warfare, more dominant leaders were the ones that were preferred. In times of peace, more prestigious leaders were the ones that were preferred. Makes complete sense. If you are facing a scary tribe from the other valley, you want someone that's going to stand firm and is going to not take any shit, and they're going to go for it. When in times of peace, that person becomes a bit tyrannical. It's a little bit too much energy when there's not anybody else to fight. And it's so funny how you see this just same dynamic. To me, it seems play out no matter how big the populations get. It's essentially the same physics.
That's right. It's happened repeatedly. If you're in a war, what you want is the commander and everybody, to goddamn follow the instructions and just do what you're told. And, you know, it's not like we're going to sit there and argue, debate, and so on. So what you see is the breakdowns, and particularly you see the breakdowns in also when they're at odds. There's a lot more to argue about. Like now, the populists of the left and the populists of the right. And so in the 1930s, you saw 4 democracies become dictatorships, choose to become dictatorships. They had parliaments that chose to become dictatorships. Germany, Italy, Spain, and Japan chose that because in order to fight, that's what you need. And that your anthropologist friends are right on that.
Yeah, they're consolidating power in an attempt to try and be able to enact more change more easily. It's not, we haven't got time. We haven't got time to get this across the line diplomatically. We haven't got time to get everybody on the same page. We'll have one person who knows what they're doing and they'll push it forward. One thing that
And another thing that's common is the foreign enemy. When you have a situation where you have internal dispute, it's very, very common to try to bring the country together, get support by the leader by having the common enemy. Yep. You know, and so we'll all rally around, you know, the leader, and you could see, you know, it was like, you know, when 9/11 happened and, you know, the president, you know, Bush gets a standing ovation and we're all behind you in that fight. And so that's timeless and universal dynamic.
If you can't bond yourselves together over shared love of an in-group, shared hatred of an out-group is a close enough proxy, I suppose, for that interim.